let's start the class today, okay? How's everyone? Good? Had a good rest? So what we're going to do today is we're going to finish the chapter about the decision making. Then we have one more chapter left, that's transfer pricing. Then we're going to do the case together. After that, we are going to have a review session. For the review session, I was thinking about just making a long video about all the topics I think it's going to be tested and also the format of the exam. What I'm thinking is for the review, I will post questions on the Blackboard as review questions. Then you do it at home, then you watch the video for the answers. Because I think that's better than you just watch what when I do it. The best way to learn is to study by yourself, trying to work it out, understand what you know, what you don't know. Then you check, watch the video to really focus on the question you don't know. Okay, so essentially after today's class, we're going to have 3 classes left. 2 classes on transfer pricing, then 1 cases, then we have review videos, okay? All right, let's start the class today. Today, we're going to finish the decision making. Last class, we start with the decision making. We said when you're going to make a decision, what really matters is the relevant cost, okay? So every single question, you think about what are the relevant cost. And to figure the relevant cost, a lot of times you want to look at, say, incremental revenue compared to incremental cost. Every single time if you decide you're gonna take a project or make like a buy or sell decisions, you also want to make sure the incremental revenue is larger than incremental cost. So today we're going to talk about a couple of special scenarios. All right, the first one is called the product mix decision with capacity constraints. This only happens, like I said, when you have a multiple product and when you have a capacity constraints. If you don't have a multiple product, you don't have one product, then really doesn't matter you have a constraints or not, because you can only produce one product. Or say if you have multiple products, but if you don't have constraints, then you should just produce as many as you could as long as you have a positive contribution margin. So this question we're going to talk about today is very special. It only applies when you have a multiple product and also when you have a capacity constraint. Because you have a capacity constraint, then you cannot produce as many as possible. Okay. So here, when you have a capacity constraint with multiple products, how do you know which product to produce? And here we have one rule is going to produce the one with the highest contribution margin per unit of constrained resources. Here, the key is actually here, even it's not highlighted, is contribution margin per unit based on constrained resources. Okay, so not based on the product itself, has to be based on for 1 unit of the constrained resources, what is the highest contribution margin, and then pick the one with the highest contribution margin. Okay. For example, now the company has 2 products, product A and B. Okay. So here we have a contribution margin format income statement. It tells you how much is the contribution margin per unit. Then here, what is the constraint? Constraint is the machine hours. Okay, so the company has a limited number of machines. Therefore, this is they have a limited capacity on how many hours each product can use the machine hours. So here, that's the capacity constraint. And which product you should produce? If you just look at this, a lot of students say we should produce product B because look at this, it has a higher contribution margin. But that's not the right answer because here you should look at not the contribution margin per product. Instead, we should look at the contribution margin based on the constrained resources. So here, look at here, to produce 1 unit product A, you need 0.5 machine hours. To produce 1 unit product B, you need 3 hours. Okay, so if you just take the contribution margin divided by the machine hours, you can see here each machine hours, the contribution margin is $8. But for product A, each machine hours contribution margin for product B is only 5. So here, this is just going to be 15 divided by 3. This is just going to be 4 divided by 0.5. Okay. In that case, I would say the winner is going to be product A because it has the highest contribution margin per machine hour. Okay. Let's take a look at another example. So this enzyme product company, they produce 2 products, A and B. Okay. Here, the constraint is this machine A1. So that's the constraint. How do I know it's a constraint? Because here they already utilized at 100% capacity, and which is 2,400 minutes per week. That's the constraint. Maximum, you can only use this machine at 2,400 minutes per week. And there are other machines that will have excess capacity. Okay, so here the constraint is machine A1. Now you have multiple products, product A and B. So here, which product should be the one you're going to be emphasized? What does it mean by be emphasized? Which is the one you should promote most, produce most? Okay. So here, look at the 2 products, A and B, and their contribution margin unit is 24 was 15. Okay, and also it tells you that's the demand. This is the demand from the customers. And to process 1 unit product 1, it takes 1 minute A1 hour, A1 time, and half minutes A1 time for product 2. Okay, so here this is important to know this because this is the constraint. This is the constraint. Okay. So how to solve a question like this? To solve a question like this, first we need to calculate what is the contribution margin per constrained resources. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. I just wanted to come back. I want to make sure you remember some of the numbers. Okay. So here, contribution margin per unit for product 1 is 24. For product 2 is 15. And take 1 minute to process 1 unit product 1, half minutes to process product B. Okay. So now here, then if we only have 1 minute machine A, what's the contribution margin for each product? For each product here, you take 1 minute to produce 1 unit product 1, and the contribution 1 unit is 24. So here, going to be 24 contribution margin per minute of machine A1 for product 1. But for product 2, you only take a half minute to produce 1 product 2, and for each product 2, you have $15 contribution margin per unit. So therefore, the total is actually going to be $30 contribution margin per unit of product 2. If you want to know how I get this $30, you can just take this 15 divided by 0.5. That's half a minute to process 1 unit of product 2, so which gives you 30. Okay. For the product 1, they just take 24 divided by 1 because it takes 1 minute. They'll give you 24. Okay. So here you can take a look at it because the product 2 has a higher contribution margin per minute of machine A1. You should emphasize product 2. So what does it mean by emphasize? We're going to produce as many units of product 2 possible up to the current demand. Okay, so you want to produce as many as possible to meet all the demand of a product 2 if it's possible. And if you have anything left, should go to product 1. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. Weekly demand for the product 2 is 2,200 units, and then we're going to produce as many as we could. And you can see here for machine A1, just to produce product 2, it takes 1,100 minutes. For each week, A1 can only use 2,400 minutes. So here, it already allocated 1,100 units to product 2. So you only have 1,300 units left, which you can use to produce product 1. Okay, so here you only produce 1,300 units, which is below the demand for product 1. But that's okay because we have limited resources. We cannot meet all the demand. Therefore, we look at 2 products. We choose the one with the highest contribution margin per constrained resources. Okay, so that's the idea. The idea is if you have multiple products, if you have a constrained capacity, and you want to first calculate what is the contribution margin per constrained resources, then pick the one with the highest contribution margin per constrained resources. Then you're trying to produce as many as possible until you meet the demand. Whatever left, you use to produce the rest of the product. So if you have a multiple product and then you want to rank the contribution margin per constrained resources. Okay. All right. This is just the presentation to show you what is the total contribution margin if we use our production schedule based on our calculation. Here you produce 2,200 the product 1, and the contribution margin is $15 per unit. Then you also produce 1,300 product 1, then with a contribution margin of $24 per unit. So this is the total contribution margin you have based on your optimal production schedule. Okay. Now, I have the following example. This is the question you have on your study notes. This is absolutely a very interesting example. It's all about constrained resources. So let's take a look at this question. So this is a food store, okay? They're on a nice beach resort. And they have a limited capacity. What is a limited capacity here? It's about this fridge, okay? So everyone can imagine, I have a chat question coming in. The constraint is not like a cost driver. Constraint just literally is a resources you have, you can use, okay? All right. So let's look at it here. Here you have this constraint. You have limited resources. Just imagine, right? If you have a very small store, you only have one big fridge. So you have to decide what type of drinks you want to put in it, right? Here you have 4 different drinks. You have a Coke, lemonade, punch, and orange juice. Now you have to decide which one you are going to put in your fridge and how many you need to put. Okay. Let's read more. There's more information here. You have a maximum space of 12 feet. Okay. So that's how much you can use for all the drinks. And for each drink, need a minimum 1 foot, maximum 6 feet. It basically said, well, she wanted to put all of them in the fridge, okay? Minimum 1, but maximum, you don't want to put too many drinks in your fridge. So maximum is that cannot take up more than 6 feet, okay? So this is essentially is 1 foot and 6 feet. It's 6 feet in a way. It's kind of like a demand. That's the ceiling of the demand. Okay, you're not going to put more than 6 feet of drinks in your fridge. Now here you have the information in the table below, and it tells you how much you can sell per case, and what's the variable cost per case, and it also tells you here how many cases can be sold per foot per day. Okay, so if you put there normally how many you can actually have cases put there and sold. So what we have here, this is basically tells you to sell 1 case, how much resources it's gonna take, okay? And this resources is the constraint. All right, so now the question facing this food store is decide which one to sell, which one to put on the shelf, and how much space it should take. Okay, how to solve a question like this? Just like what we talked about in the last question, right? The first, we have to calculate the contribution margin. And second, we have to calculate the contribution margin based on constrained resources. And then next step, we're gonna rank it, right? We're gonna pick the one with the highest one. And then for each one, we're trying to maximize to the maximum demand, and whatever we have left, and then we go to the second one ranked. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. First, we should calculate the contribution margin. Contribution margin, just like what we did in the past, very simple. You take the price, you subtract the variable cost of it. Okay, so here, that's what I have. Look at the first table. This is the contribution margin for each product. I take the sales price, I subtract the variable cost, and I give you a contribution margin per case. Okay, so the key here, this is per case. This is, we can't just look at the contribution margin itself, then make a decision, because this is based on per case, but not on constrained resources. Therefore, we need to go one step further, okay? Here, it tells you for each food of the constrained resources that day, how many cases can you sell, okay? How many cases can you sell? So this is a slightly different way from the question we had before. This one basically tells you for one unit of constrained resources, how many units you can actually sell. How many units you can actually sell. Here, for Coke, you can sell 10 units. Every unit you sell, you have a contribution margin for $4.70. So for 1 unit of constrained resources, you actually have a contribution of $47, okay? So we do this for every single drink. And therefore, for 1 unit of constrained resources, we have a contribution margin for each product. And next step, what we're going to do is we're going to rank it, right? We can see which one is number 1. Here, orange juice, number 1, right? And the punch, number 2. Lemonade, number 3, and the Coke is number 4, okay? So since we have limited resources in the fridge, and we are trying to first put the orange juice in it. And just remember, for each drink, you need a minimum 1 unit, and you need a maximum 6, okay? So there are a couple of ways to do it, but because it has a minimum, what I'm going to do is I always put the 1 first, to make sure at least each drink has 1 foot on the shelf. Okay, so here you want to put 1 first on each column, each row. Okay, then you want to maximize based on how they ranked. So orange juice, we're gonna trying to put all 6 feet in it. So when you put a 6 feet, that is your contribution margin. per foot. And therefore, for each day, if you put 6 feet, and you can have $1,280 contribution margin. Just remember here how many shelf space we have. This added together can only give you 12, okay? So there are only 12 feet in the fridge. And therefore, you want to make sure all this added together reach 12, okay? So here, you're going to start with 6, and then you are going to move to the next one. And here, next one, you can only put 4, not 6. Why? Remember, we first put 1 here, we put 1 here, we put 6 here, and the total is 12. So how many you have left? You only have 4 left, okay? So even this is a great drink, it can produce a positive contribution, but you cannot sell 6, you cannot put 6 feet in it because that's the only space you have left, okay? So that's why we have 4 feet, 4 feet. You can see here, that's how we get this number. Basically what we did is only orange juice can meet all of the demand. And then for the punch, is the number 2 rank, so they get 4 feet. For the rest, they can only have a minimum space in the fridge. Okay? Any questions? So this is a really fun question. It's very practical. It's very practical, but it's very easy to do as long as you follow the rule. So the rule is very simple. First, calculate the contribution margin per constrained resources, per unit of constrained resources. And then you rank it, okay? Next, you allocate, but allocate, I want to make sure if you have a minimum, you have to meet the minimum first, then you want to go to the one with the highest rank and try to meet all the demand. Then after you meet all the demand for the one with the highest rank, then you can move it down to the ones ranked second. Okay. So this is the question we have when you have a multiple product and when you have a constrained resources. So let's take a look at the next type of very fun question. Is what happens when you have a bottleneck. So what is the bottleneck? So what the bottleneck is a question very similar to what we have with multiple product with limited constrained resources. So bottleneck is also to do with the constraint and resources and capacity, but this is about a different component, different stage of production. So here, let's imagine if you have to have a multiple stage of production, okay, it goes like this. What is the bottleneck? Means that's one of the stage has limited resources. So it's like a bottle, it's so narrow like here, and it's so narrow, so all the production can stop here, cannot keep forward because you have a limited resources at one of the stage, okay? So that's why we call it a bottleneck. It's really like a bottleneck, right? Remember, you have like a production side, you have excess capacity here, excess capacity here, but you have a limited capacity in between. So it's kind of like a stocked. Okay. So this bottleneck can happen in multiple stages of the production. Therefore, how are we going to solve questions when you have a bottleneck? What's the best way for us to maximize our operating income? We have a couple of steps. First, we have to recognize we do have a bottleneck problem, and we also want to look at the contribution margin for the entire system and also at each stage. And then you say, hey, I want to see which stage or which department is the bottleneck, okay? And the next one is the key is you want to keep the bottleneck option. If it's a department, only focus on that department, you want to keep that one busy, okay? You want to subordinate all other options to the bottleneck operation. So basically means if you have a multiple department, or multiple stage of production. You want to see which one is the bottleneck, and you want to maximize the operation in that bottleneck department. For the rest of the department, they are going to be subordinate department trying to support the bottleneck department to make sure it operates to its maximum. Okay, and also you want to take actions to increase the efficiency and the capacity of the bottleneck operation. These are very important. You may have many actions you can take to increase the efficiency, but the key here is only the bottleneck options, because if you increase the efficiency of other department, if they're not a bottleneck, even you increase the efficiency, it will not increase the contribution margin of the entire system, because whatever you have will still stuck at the bottleneck operation. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the example. This example is also on your study notes. Okay. So this company is producing a cabinet. That's the product. And here, for product, it is for each cabinet, the sales was $75. It has a direct material of $35. Okay, at the start of machining operation. There's no variable cost. They can sell whatever it will produce. So this is very important. This sentence basically tells you demand is not the issue. Okay, therefore the problem is with the production, and then the bottleneck is will be an issue. Why? Because if you don't have a demand, then you will not have a bottleneck issue, right? Because whatever you produce, you can sell, and that's not a problem. So here you can sell whatever you produced, but you cannot produce enough. Okay. So let's see. For this cabinet, they have two departments. First, you go through the machining, then you go to the finishing. So this is step number 1. This is step number 2. Okay. So it goes like this. You have first you have machining department. It manufacture and produce all the cabinet. Then after it's finished, it's moved to the second stage, which is the finishing department. Okay. So just look at this too. Which department is the bottleneck? Which is the department make the company cannot produce as many as needed? Look at it here. You have this capacity and you have production. If you look at the machining department, you can see here capacity is larger than the production, which means they can basically produce more. Finishing, just by look at this, whatever the capacity is completely maxed out. So a couple of students send in the answer in over chat. Everyone can tell finishing is the bottleneck, right? And therefore, for the company, now the goal is to really increase the efficiency of the finishing department. Okay, so this is the department. We have to make it more efficient and try to increase the capacity. All right. So let's take a look at on the left side. There are a couple of actions the company is thinking about taking. Okay. So the first action the company is thinking about is they're going to use some tools, and so it can increase the annual finishing output by 1,150 units. So it can increase the capacity, but it's not come for free, right? So now you have this annual cost of $35,000 for the tools. The question is, should the company acquire these tools? So how do you solve a question like this? The question like this is we really have to think about the whole thing, the whole operation as a whole. Think about if you take this option, how it's going to increase the contribution margin. Okay, and of course this is a right action because the focus is the finishing operation, right? Everyone knows here because we have this bottleneck problem, we needed to increase the efficiency and the capacity of the finishing operation. The question is it worth it or not? So here I have some of the answers here. Let's think about it. If you're gonna produce 1,150 more, right? How this is going to increase the contribution margin? Let's take a look at it here. You sell 75. Direct material is 35. You have no other variable cost. So the only cost that you have, look at this, is the fixed operating cost, which is already fixed, okay? So here, because they're fixed cost, therefore, you don't need to consider that when you think about the contribution margin, okay? Now, you're gonna increase contribution margin by 1,150 units, and this is contribution margin per unit. So that is the increase contribution margin if you produce 1,150 units more, okay? Then how about the cost? Cost is how much you have to pay to buy the new tools. And therefore, you are going to increase operating income. If you take this action, the answer is yes, because by producing 1,150 units more, you are going to have a positive contribution margin and also increase the operating income. Okay, so that's a good action. Now let's take a look at the second action the company is thinking of. You also have this on your study notes, okay? So if you cannot see it clearly, you can read your study notes. So here, now the production manager of the department one, the machining department, they also have a proposal. They said, hey, we can do it faster. We can increase the annual capacity. And it's only cost $20,000 more, but we can increase the capacity by 9,000 units. So should the company take this action? The answer is no. Why? Because we already have actual capacities, right? We don't need to increase the capacity of the machining department. And it's not the bottleneck. That's not the focus. Now for the company to optimize the production process, they need to increase the efficiency and capacity of department 2, not department 1. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the next step. Now there's an outside contractor said, hey, we can do the finishing operation for you. For 10,000 units, we only need to charge you $9 per unit. Okay, so here, if you look at this, you do it at home, seems like it's a better deal, right? Because the fixed cost per unit produced is like $3. Should the company accept this offer or not? Okay. Let's really think about how this is gonna impact the company. Same thing, we're going to look at the contribution margin again for the whole company, not only the department 2. Okay. All right. So now think about it. For each unit, if the company can produce 1 more unit, that's the contribution margin. $75 and so $40 per unit. That's the contribution margin per unit. And so if you increase 10,000 units, it's going to be $400,000 increase. And the cost is only 90,000. So increase the operating income will be 310,000. And now the question is, what happened to the $3 you have now? That is not relevant. $3 cost per unit is not relevant because they're fixed cost, right? So it really doesn't matter. You're not going to actually save or not save. It's already fixed. It's already sunk. Okay, so in this case, as long as you can produce more, and because you already have the excess capacity at the machine level, and therefore As long as you can produce more, and you will make money. So therefore, the answer is yes, you should accept this offer. You should accept this offer. All right. So let's take a look at the last question we have here. So the last question we have, last action, is that another company, they offered to machine 5,000 units at $3 per unit. Half the $6 per unit is going to cost to do the machining in the house. So should the company accept this offer? So this is slightly different from the action we had before, because the action we had before for the finishing department, the finishing department has a bottleneck on the capacity. So they needed outsider to produce more for the finishing department. But for the machining department, it has excess capacity. So for the machining department, when they decide they want to outsource or they want to make by themselves, they really have to think about, is this going to save money or not, okay? So if you just look at on paper, seems like it's going to save money, because here outside only take $3 to manufacture, but for the machinery department, if you look at it here, seems like you have a $6 per unit. Is this really a good deal or not? The answer actually should be no. Why? Because yes, it is a $6 per unit for the machining, but that's a fixed cost. It's already sunk. It's not going to be saved if the company decided to outsource this. Therefore, if the company outsource, if the company make it in-house, basically company don't need to pay anything. But if they outsource, they have to pay $3 per unit. So it's not a good deal, okay? So the answer should be no. The company should not take this action, okay? Any questions? So this is a bottleneck problem. For the bottleneck problem, I wanted to summarize what we just talked about. There are a couple of things. First is when you make decisions with the actions, you should always thought about the entire company, not only one department, okay? So if you have a multiple department, when you consider any actions, think about for the entire company, for the contribution margin, all should be based on the entire company. And the second, you need to identify which department is the bottleneck department. And the goal is to maximize the capacity and increase efficiency for the bottleneck department, okay? So there's no use to increase the efficiency or capacity for other department unless the bottleneck or issue is fixed, okay? So we have a question. How can you tell which department is a bottleneck? That's an excellent question. How can you tell? Look at the capacity and the production. Okay, so if the production is already maxed out the capacity, then that's the bottleneck department. Does that make sense? All right. Okay, so let's move to the next question. Next question is also a very fun question. Is when you're gonna decide, are you gonna add a job, a service, a product, a department, or customer, something like that? They're all similar questions. This is the solution is actually very simple. Basically, look at the relevant cost. There's two ways to do it. We can do a pro forma, just compare two different approaches. If you keep the current status, or if you add a job, how it's gonna look like. Or the second approach, just look at any differential or differentiation cost or revenues. It's gonna increase cost or it's gonna increase revenue. Okay, so here I have a couple of examples to show you different approaches. All right, so let's read this question. The company is thinking about a new machine. Okay, so that machine rent for $3,000. So the company is thinking about should we rent the machine or not rent the machine. Okay. So here to help you analyze the situation, we already have a contribution margin format financial statement ready. I'm gonna say this again. If you're going to prepare the pro forma statement, which means going to compare current financial statement to the forecasted financial statement, and always use the contribution margin format, okay? Never use absorption format. Always use contribution margin format, okay? So here, you have all the sales, direct material, direct labor, variable overhead, labor contribution margin, and here we have what happens if you have a new machine. This machine is gonna save the labor hours. So that's why you can see here, direct labor is cheaper if you have a new machine. And everything else is the same. And however, to get a new machine, you have to pay more. You have to pay more. So this is added to the fixed cost. And here, if you are going to do the pro forma approach, you just need to look at the net income, right? Here, if you have a new machine, the net income is much higher than whatever you have now. Therefore, the answer is yes, you should rent a new machine. Okay. Another way you can do say, I'm just look at the difference in cost and the difference in revenue. If you have a new machine, you can take a look at it here. Basically, it's gonna decrease your direct labor cost, and that's how much you can save. And increase your fixed cost, that's how much you have to pay. And as long as this differential cost is larger than zero, cost of saving is larger than zero, the answer is yes, you should do it. Okay. So next, I will show you another example. It's also kind of fun example. This is about how about are you going to drop a product line? Okay. So here, the product in question is a digital watch. Okay. Why the company is thinking about drop this product is based on their income statement. Look at their income statement. That's what they have now. Okay. Unfortunately, now they have a loss. Right. So the management is talking to the cost accountant and said, hey, this digital watch we produce, but we are actually not making any money based on the income statement. So should we drop this product from our production process? Okay. How we're gonna answer this question? Same method. We can do a pro forma, or we can look at are we gonna have any cost of savings if we actually drop the product? So let's take a look at it here. This is a pro forma approach, and this is what we have now. Okay, we're not doing anything. That's what we're gonna have. You can see here, we're gonna have a loss. What happens if we drop it? Okay, if you drop it, certainly you're not gonna have any sales, right? And no manufacturing expenses, no direct material, no direct labor, and no commission, no shipping, nothing. So contribution margin is zero. But look at the fixed cost. Are we still going to have the same fixed cost? The answer is yes, right? This is the factory overhead. Even you drop the digital watch production, you're still going to have overhead. Salary of a manager, well, you don't have that because you are not going to produce any watch anymore. So here I wanted you to pay attention. This is called a line manager. This basically said that the manager who is responsible for producing the watch. Okay, that's why it can be laid off. All right, next one, depreciation. If we don't have watch, can we save depreciation? The answer is no. Why? Because unless you also sold all the machines, you're still gonna have a depreciation. But to say, if you have the machine is used for producing other watches at the same time, then you're still gonna have a depreciation. So dropping the digital watches product line is not going to save your depreciation cost. Okay. But advertising, say if this advertising is only for digital watch, yes, you can save. and rent factory space. Here, if this one, you only rent this to produce a digital watch, yes, you can say. If there's other purpose, then you can't say. Okay, so here we just make assumption that we only rent this specific factory. A certain space can be get rid of if we get rid of the product line. So we do have some savings. And the next one, administrative expenses. A lot of times you can't save because you still need an accountant, you still need IT support, you still need a janitor, so can't save. Okay, so you do all this, you will find out, wow, by dropping the digital watches, you actually have a larger operating loss. So here, just compare the financial statement. The answer is no, you should not drop the digital watch. Okay. So we can do a second approach by just look at the cost, right? We can say, hey, if we drop it, is there any differences in cost? Here, if you drop it and you're going to lose $300,000, that's your contribution loss. But you can save all this cost. So compare incremental revenue loss to the incremental cost savings. You will say, hey, actually, I lose $40,000. This is not a smart move, so you should not drop the watch. Okay, this will give you a reduction of income of 40,000. So which method do I prefer? I always actually prefer the first method. It takes longer, but in practice, a lot of times you need to do a presentation to show your answer, or need to explain this to the manager. So you have to do that anyway in practice. For the exams and homeworks, either way works, because you can see here the differentiation costing approach is going to be much faster and easier to do. Okay. So the real problem in this kind of question is really about this fixed cost. Okay, a lot of times you will think about what kind of fixed cost can be saved, what kind of fixed cost cannot be saved. A lot of times fixed costs are sunk. So when you're thinking about, am I going to drop a product, or drop a manager, or drop a customer, drop a product, normally you cannot save the fixed cost because they're sunk. But on the other hand, if you're thinking about, say, I'm going to add a new customer, I'm going to add a new product, a lot of times you have to consider the fixed cost, especially if you are operating at a full capacity. A lot of times adding a new customer or adding a new product means increased fixed cost. Okay. So here, like I said, the cost is always flexible. There's no meaning to memorize like specific question. Really understand the how to say, the spirit behind the question, not the question itself. All right. So I wanted to actually talk about the last question in this chapter. It's also a very interesting question. I don't think you have it on the study notes. If you don't have it, it's fine. I know it's in the textbook. This is about, are you going to sell or are you going to process further? Okay, you will only have this question when you have something called a joint production process, which means you have a multiple stage of production, but you can sell at a certain stage, or you can continue your production to a further process. Okay. So we call it kind of joint product production, which means at a different stage, you're going to produce a different kind of product. You can all sell at a different stage. Okay. So this is a kind of very interesting. I want to show you. This is a process of oil. Okay. Very practical example for joint production process. So you start with this raw material, okay? And then you have a multiple production process. and then you can sell as oil, or you can sell as a gas, or you can sell as a chemical. And so this is the point you have to decide what you're gonna do, okay? Which product you decide to process. You can sell at this stage, or you can continue to process and sell at a more further stage. So the question you should also ask is like, at which stage I should stop? At which stage I should stop? Okay? So the decision, how do you decide at which stage you should stop and sell, or you should continue to process? And the decision is always incremental revenue. Okay, incremental revenue. Basically, you ask yourself, say, if I'm going one stage further, am I going to make more money compared to the cost of one more stage of production? Okay, as long as incremental revenue is larger than incremental cost, you should continue. You should continue. Okay. Let's take a look at an example. So this company, they produce a number, okay? So they cut the log and they produce a number, and also this sawdust, okay? So they can sell at this stage, or they can continue, they can continue. Okay, they can continue. So the question is, should they just sell at the time when they can split, or they should process further to the next stage, okay? Now let's look at the information we have on the next slide. Okay, so if they just stop at the time, split it off, that's the sales price. If they just sell at that stage, number is $140. Sawdust is $40. Okay. They can continue to process more. One more stage, they are going to be able to charge a higher price. Of course, one more stage of production comes with additional cost. So the cost will be $50 for number and $20 for sawdust. Okay. So now the decision is, are we going to stop and sell here, or are we going to process and sell here? Okay. Are we going to solve a question like this? Like what I just talked about, look at the incremental revenue and compare it to incremental cost. Let's take a look at it here. First, figure out the incremental revenues. If you're going to sell at the next stage, for lumber, you can get a $270, sawdust, $50. But you have to give up the revenue you could get at the split off point, okay? So if you go one more stage further, you will make additional $130 for the lumber, $10 for the sawdust, okay? Basically said, if you stop now, you make 140 for lumber. If you move to next stage, you make 270. So you can make $130 more if you move from current stage to the next stage. But look at the lumber, how much is the cost? Cost is $50. Okay, so here, if you move one more stage of production, you're going to make $80. But the sawdust, if you move one more stage, you are going to lose $10. Okay? So compare these two products, you say, hey, for this number, I should process more, one more stage. Sawdust, I should just stop at where it is and sell at $50. So the sawdust, this will be your selling price. And for the number, you wanted to go one stage more, so you're gonna sell at $270. Okay? Any questions? So if no question, actually I want to summarize what we need to do for this type of question. For this type of question, it's actually fairly straightforward. In this example, it's 2 stages, but it can be applied to multiple stages. The only thing you need to remember is every time when you go to the next stage, you have to ask yourself, if I move to that stage, how much more money I can make, which is the incremental revenue. Now I want to get compared to the incremental cost. Does demand influence the split off point? Yes, but the demand should be somehow reflected in the sales price. So we are assuming equilibrium. The sales price is set at a certain price. You assume you can sell everything you produce at that price. That makes sense. So if you have a weaker demand, then you should see the price should be reset to a cheaper price. Make sense? All right. Any other questions? If no question, then I think that's all for this chapter. Okay. We have a couple of examples in the homework that are very similar, but this is an example. This is a chapter I like very much. It's a lot of fun. Okay. Next class, we are not going to do the case. Instead, we're going to do the transfer pricing. We're going to spend 2 classes on transfer pricing. Transfer pricing is a special case of decision making. And I will update the study notes a little bit. So you're going to see a new study notes for the transfer pricing. Then after transfer pricing, we're going to do the case in class. Then you are going to see a video with the exam review. For the exam review, we are not going to have a live class for the exam review. Instead, I will post the questions without answer on the Blackboard. Basically cover what's the format, what kind of question will be tested. Then you do it at home, then you watch the video. The video will be just like 1 hour, 15 minutes, but I want you to watch the video after you try to do the question first, okay? Then that will be for the that week. Then we will have a final exam will be online, and I will talk about what's the format is going to be on the review video. Okay. Let's see if any questions. So the question about the homework, you will get the full credit for the homework. Whatever the credit you're gonna get is whatever you have on the syllabus. Okay. Yeah, because remember we dropped 1 chapter from this class. For the chapter, the homeworks and the quiz, I will give you the full credit. I will give you the full credit even you didn't do the quiz and the homework for the chapter we dropped. Okay. Yes, I will post these slides on the Blackboard. Any other questions? And then that's all for today. Okay. So take care and see you on Thursday. Bye bye.